The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on an all-new Sports Stove podcast. We're going to look at an NFL mock draft and kind of walk through the NFL draft stuff. We'll talk about college basketball, the tournament, and coaching changes. And we'll talk about World Baseball Classic and how it affects the MLB season. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up to me?
Welcome in to an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. They're dropping new flavors, it seems like every day. Go to righteousfelon.com, use the promo code BELLYUP. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. And so make sure you head over to righteousfelon.com and try out some jerky today. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I'm joined by my dad, Dale Stover, on this fine Wednesday evening. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good, boy. Busy sports time. A lot of fun stuff to keep up with going on now.
Yeah, I guess. Every bracket is completely busted, so that's no fun anymore. But outside of that, crazy college basketball games. We'll get to that here in a little bit. And then, of course, NFL draft continues to climb closer and closer, and Major League Baseball, or at least the World Baseball Classic, had a lot of fun things going on for baseball fans this week as well. And so plenty of things to talk about. And I want to start with let's start with Major League Baseball, Dad, and the World Baseball Classic. I got to watch some of the USA games and kind of just follow and keep up with what was going on there. And the final game came down to Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout, and Mike Trout ended up striking out. And so Japan takes the World Baseball Classic. And Dad, I got to tell you, I've not paid attention to the World Baseball Classic in the past. And this year I did, and I absolutely loved it. And I thought it was a lot of fun. It was great to see Mike Trout and how much he enjoyed playing in it as well. And Trey Turner had some huge at bats and different things going through. So let's start with just in general. Did you pay attention to the World Baseball Classic at all?
I did keep up with who was winning and got reports on it. I did not watch any of it, but I did kind of keep up what was going on, and especially when I found out that all the United States, a lot of the big name players were playing for them, and of course, then a lot of major league players are probably on all the other teams, or at least on quite a few of them. So yeah, I definitely when I realized that, that piqued my interest, and well, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about it, but I think it was very good for baseball to kick off the season.
Yeah, I think so too. Of course, there was a lot of backlash when Edwin Diaz got injured, and the thought was, some people were saying, well, you shouldn't let Major League Baseball players play in this because there's injuries and all this kind of stuff. But and then Jose Altuve broke his thumb. He's going to be out for at least 2 months as well. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun. And to hear Mike Trout talk about it, he said, I'm already in for the next time, and I'm going to go recruit everybody I can possibly recruit to come and play. He just absolutely loved his time there. He had turned it down the previous World Baseball Classic, but did go this year and absolutely loved it. So to me, I thought it was good to see players having a good time. In spring training, you don't see competitive baseball. And in this, you saw competitive baseball, and you saw just guys having a good time for all the teams. Mexico, I kept up with Mexico a bit because there were some Brewers on there with Luis Reyes and Rowdy Tellez. And then, of course, following USA as well. And then Venezuela, and they had some fun things. Dominican Republic had some fun things going on. Great Britain had ugly jerseys. There's a lot of different things, and Japan was phenomenal, especially their pitching was lights out as well. So it was just fun having such competitive baseball that I think you're right. I think it's going to kick off the Major League Baseball season with a bang because of just the excitement around baseball right now as a whole. Is that the way that you see it?
Yes. Well, I'm sure it'll really help the major league as far as internationally is concerned. I think it'll bring a lot more attention there. But I think in this country, people will be more excited now to see some of these players on their teams, on the major league teams. And how everything goes there, because like I said, usually there's not much excitement around the spring training, and that, I mean, if you live in the spring training sites or go to visit, I guess there is, but as a whole, you don't keep up with it a lot. It doesn't matter a lot. A lot of the good players don't play all the time. But now I think getting ready for the season, this got everybody more excited about baseball. I think especially the first couple of weeks, will kick off with a lot more interest than there's been in the past.
Yeah, it's funny you watch. Of course, Shohei is Shohei Ohtani. I mean, he proved himself to be one of the best baseball players probably ever. Mike Trout had a great time. He played great this week as well. Throughout this tournament, Trey Turner had some big moments, but Randy Arozarena, playing for Mexico, he had some great plays. His personality was in full form, and that's something Major League Baseball has to do better at, is showing the personalities within the game. And Arozarena was able to do that and had a great time. Huge, robbed a home run. Had a lot. I think he had 6 putouts in one game from left field, which is incredibly rare for an outfielder. So there's a lot of exciting things, and I do think it carries over. What about for the players aspect of it? Do you think that this is going to help the players that played in the World Baseball Classic? Are they warm, and so are they going to come out hot to start the season? Or do you think that they might have a little bit of a letdown going into the season, where maybe they struggle early in the season before finding their rhythm again?
We'll see. I think this would help. I think playing competitive baseball and, they were in form rather than spring training where maybe some of these guys didn't play a whole lot and were kind of easing their way into it. I think it'll help. I don't think anybody will be worn out. There were some things about the injuries, but there's kind of 2 major injuries, and the one was really a fluke. As far as the celebration, it's really a shame for Diaz, but and the thing with Altuve could have happened in spring training. Sure. So I don't know that there was too much really to worry about there. I think these players will be ready to go, and it may even help energize their teams when they come back, being ready to play baseball.
When you think of players getting injured celebrating, who's the first person that comes to mind?
I should know what you're talking about, but
Martin Gramatica.
Yes.
Jumping up and down and breaking his leg, I think, or something weird like that back in the day. I didn't give you a heads up on that one. I thought you'd remember Martin Gramatica doing it, but nonetheless, freak accident. It's going to happen wherever. It could happen walking down the road. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's, I think it makes sense. I think it makes more sense to play in the World Baseball Classic than it does to play in spring trainings. So you actually get yourself going more and things like that. Of course, rosters we'll have the final cut downs here this week. Opening day rosters are already having opening day. Pitchers are supposed to be announced by Friday. And then opening day will be the following Thursday. So a lot going on. I'll be hosting a baseball super show, getting the season previewed for Belly Up Sports. That'll be on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. on the Belly Up YouTube channel. And so encourage people to tune in. We're going to have different guys on previewing each division, talking about their teams and things like that as well. So encourage people to tune into that. And we'll continue, of course, great baseball coverage all year long, every Sunday night for the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We don't just talk fantasy, we talk baseball news as well. So I encourage you to tune into that every Sunday night, 8 p.m. on the Sports Stove YouTube channel or the Belly Up Fantasy Facebook page. And then it always comes out, the audio version, in the podcast as well. So make sure you catch those also. All right, Dad, let's transition to some football before we get to the college basketball stuff. Last week I came out with my latest Sports Stove NFL mock draft. This is the first one I did this year with all the first round picks in it. I had done 2 previously, looking at just the top 10 picks. And but now I've got all 32. I included trades. This is what I am predicting will happen. Not necessarily what I would do, but what I think is going to happen. And thankfully, after I did this one, there were no big trades because when I did my last top 10 one is when Carolina and Chicago made the trade. So nonetheless, I kind of just want to run through these, get some thoughts on it. We'll hit the top 10 and then some highlights after that. At the top of the draft, is Carolina. They made that trade up. They're going up to get somebody. And I've given CJ Stroud, the professionals are all saying, well, the height is a big deal for Carolina. Carolina's come out and said it's not. Actually, some things I heard this week started to make me think maybe Bryce Young does go number 1 to Carolina. But at the end of the day, for this one, I'm going CJ Stroud, continuing to prepare for my final mock draft, and then we'll figure it out from there before we have our last one. So CJ Stroud 1, Bryce Young 2, in some order. That's the way they're going. The question is who does go 1? But like I said, I think CJ Stroud, and I talked about this at the end of the college football season, Dad. CJ Stroud seems to make sense to be number 1 overall. He's got size, he's got athleticism, he's got talent, and the way he played against Georgia, one of the top defenses in college football, shows you that he can play against pro-level skills. So I think CJ Stroud makes sense at 1. I think Bryce Young is still the better player, but I don't know. The way I'm leaning right now is CJ Stroud at 1 with Bryce Young at 2. What are your thoughts on these two guys?
No, I mean, from what you heard a lot in the last few days and a lot today, it sounds like CJ Stroud, if Carolina keeps that pick, I think that's probably where that will go. And I would assume Bryce Young would be the second one then to Houston. And I think they'll both turn out well. Again, you hear a lot of people, we talked a little bit off air, I heard Chris Sims, which again, picked Zach Wilson ahead of Trevor Lawrence, and that didn't work out. So whatever, but his take was that CJ Stroud was head and shoulders above everyone there, and he had Harlan Hooker as number 3, very close to number 2. So there's going to be a lot. You're going to hear a lot of things as we get closer. A lot of it will depend on, if there are trades, but I think there's probably going to be some good quarterbacks taken maybe later in the first round or in the second or maybe in the third that, may pan out because there are some there, no doubt about it.
Well, so a couple things on that. First of all, I think Hendon Hooker is going to be a great pickup, whoever gets him. The question is going to be opportunity for the guys that get picked later. For instance, Sam Howell, who's currently scheduled to start for the Washington Commanders. 2 years ago, he was going to be a number 1 overall pick. Then he ends up going in the 6th round. Now, is he going to get his opportunity? He just might. Matt Corral is a guy we've talked about. You've talked about that Carolina right now. Is he ever going to get a chance? That's what it comes down to. If you don't get drafted in the 1st or 2nd round, your opportunity may not come just because of the fact that the guy in front of you was drafted ahead of you. We've seen very rare occasions. We've seen it a couple times in somewhat recent history. We saw it with Washington. Robert Griffin III was drafted, and Kirk Cousins was drafted later on in the same draft. And eventually, due to injury, Kirk Cousins got a chance and stole that job from Robert Griffin III. We also saw it in Seattle when Matt Flynn signed the big deal with Seattle and Russell Wilson got drafted. 3rd round, I think, if I remember right. And Russell Wilson won that job. But most people, if you're not drafted in the 1st or 2nd round, you have to almost have luck on your side to just get an opportunity and to show what you have. So it'll be interesting to see those guys that get drafted later. Do they even get the opportunity to show what they can do? That is obviously the big question. I went with number 3, Arizona. Went with Will Anderson. I think that's the lock. That's the easiest one there is. He's going to be the first non-quarterback taken in this draft. So even if Arizona trades down, whoever gets the first pick that's not a quarterback, it's going to be Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama. Indianapolis at 4, Dad. I also wrote an article last week about the Colts and the opportunities they have now because they signed Gardner Minshew. He's not the long-term answer in Indianapolis, but it gives them a chance to be patient. And so I selected Anthony Richardson at 4 thinking that Gardner Minshew can start this year. That gives time for Anthony Richardson to learn and to grow and to develop, and then maybe even use him in some packages in year one, but ultimately have him as a long-term answer in Indianapolis. Otherwise, Will Levis would make more sense just because he's more NFL ready, at least in most people's eyes. I'm not big on Will Levis, and I've got him dropping in every mock draft I've done just because I don't think that I don't know. I don't think that he has that luster that he could have had he come out last year. But anyways, I go Anthony Richardson at 4, and this is a guy that I don't understand because he was horrible this year. I mean, he's athletic, but he didn't win games, and he wasn't great either. So I don't know. Do you look at Anthony Richardson as all these people are saying he's got the greatest upside in this draft, or do you look at him as a massive question mark?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when I hear Anthony Richardson's going to be one of the top quarterbacks, I just scratch my head. I don't see this at all. Now, I know, people, and he did wow people at the combine, but the things that he wowed people at the combine about does not necessarily make you a pro quarterback and be able to read defenses and do things like that. He might be a guy that can be developed, but to me, if he's taken early in the first round, that's a reach. Now, maybe people know more, obviously than I do about that, but I'm just, I mean, the fact that he did well at the combine maybe is not too surprising physically, but the fact that he's in a conversation in the top 3 quarterbacks, that's puzzling to me, and I think you might be wasting a pick on that. Now, again, somebody might get him at the end of the first round, and it ended up being a real steal. But it seems to me like it'd make more sense to go in the bottom half of the first round than it would be early.
I mean, the way they're talking about this kid is he's Cam Newton at worst, which you take the first 3 years of Cam Newton, you'd be happy with that. But and then at best, maybe he's Josh Allen. Something to that degree. I look at it at Indianapolis, though, Dad. Their new coach comes from Philadelphia, which is running an offense with Jalen Hurts, which might fit very well Anthony Richardson's athletic abilities. And he has a cannon of an arm. He can throw the ball deep. The accuracy, his college accuracy was okay. But maybe, as with all quarterbacks, you've got to be in the right system and have the right coach. And maybe Indianapolis is that place for Anthony Richardson, especially if he's not asked to do anything in year one or very little in year one, to give him some time, give the coaches time to work with him. Maybe it works out. We'll see. I don't know. A lot of people think that somebody will trade up to number 3 to draft him to try to jump ahead of Indianapolis. I don't know. I'm interested to see how it shakes out. I don't think there's a whole lot of competition for the third quarterback. Honestly, everybody says Vegas needs a quarterback. You know what? Vegas, their coaches need to keep their job. They need a quarterback that's going to work for them. They went out and signed Jimmy Garoppolo. They may not draft a quarterback this year because they're trying to win games this year. And I don't think Anthony Richardson or Will Levis will do that for Las Vegas. So I don't think they trade up. I don't think Seattle needs to go up for a quarterback. I think these teams after Indianapolis are going to wait for next year and the year after. Big draft classes coming in with quarterbacks. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of rush for quarterback after you get past Indianapolis. I got Seattle taking Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. This would be a great spot for Jalen Carter, who's had some legal issues. And even more on top of that, he's had issues with, questions about his motor and things like that. Well, Seattle makes sense for him because Pete Carroll, well, he doesn't care as much about some character things as other coaches do. But I think Tyree Wilson goes here, the defensive end from Texas Tech. Detroit's up at 6. I gave him Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback. I really think, and I put this in the article, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa is a player to watch for at number 6. He fits Dan Campbell. Like, he's got that mindset that Dan Campbell loves. So I could see him going there. Detroit signed some cornerbacks here in free agency, so they may not draft a cornerback, but if you can have the top cornerback at number 6, it seems like a decent pick and a value pick there as well. Dad, Seattle at 5, Detroit at 6. Either of these guys you think go for quarterback?
I I think Seattle could, but again, I don't know that the quarterback's there that they need. So I think I could see them waiting till later and, getting the best player available. I definitely wouldn't think Detroit would take a quarterback there.
Detroit's a sleeper when it comes to quarterback. Obviously, Jared Goff. I don't think they should take a quarterback. I don't think Jared Goff's the answer necessarily, but you can do worse than him, and you need to build that team before you get your quarterback of the future. So I think you stick with Jared Goff and continue to build that team because they're doing the right things in Detroit. Vegas at 7, Dad. A lot of people have Vegas going quarterback in the first round. I gave him outside linebacker Nolan Smith out of Georgia. You talk about a riser up the boards with the combine and things like that. Nolan Smith is an athletic freak. You know the Raiders love speed, and Nolan Smith's got it, and he's got it from an edge rusher, outside linebacker position as well. And like I said before, the Raiders coaching staff does not have the luxury of drafting and waiting. They've got to win. And I think Nolan Smith would give them more impact in year one than a Will Levis would at number 7. So that's why I went with Nolan Smith there with the Raiders. I know you have zero respect for the coaching staff in Vegas, but what are your thoughts on the Raiders?
No, there's no doubt about that. Zero respect there. I mean, I think, they're going to have quite a good year, or I don't know if the coach would even make it through the year. So we'll see how that goes there. But yeah, I don't think drafting a quarterback would make a lot of sense there. Not with where they got Garoppolo, right? And so I think that'd be where they're headed there. So
at 8 and 9, you got the Falcons and the Bears, and I went offensive lineman for both of them. Both of them need to build the offensive line. Peter Skoronski from Northwestern to Atlanta, and the Bears with Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State. Both of these teams could go a number of directions. Atlanta could always use another target, another weapon. But at the end of the day, I like building that offensive line. I think the Bears, same thing. The Bears have done a lot to address a lot of positions in this offseason, but the O-line and the D-line still need a lot of attention. So I think if you can get the second offensive lineman off the board, you do that. And let's face it, people value offensive linemen far higher than they did a decade ago. And then at 10, I went with Jalen Carter to Philadelphia. And again, I think Jalen Carter fits in Philadelphia perfectly. They have the veteran defensive line. They could bring this kid in. They could mentor him. He obviously has made some mental errors. He hasn't done drastic, horrible legal things, but he has made a lot of mental, immature mistakes. And then, like I said, during his pro day, Dad, he couldn't even finish his pro day things because he was too exhausted. And he didn't do the 40. He didn't do the weightlifting. All he was doing was the defensive lineman drills, and he was too exhausted. So that scares me a lot. He's supposed to have this incredible talent. My question is, does he have the mindset to be a professional? And if he does, or if he's on that fence, well, Philadelphia is the right spot for him. He could go as high as 5, and I think 10. He could go as low as 15, but I think 10 is the right spot for him. Any thoughts on my offensive lineman picks or Jalen Carter at 10?
No, I think now Atlanta, I don't know that they couldn't be an outside look at a quarterback, but probably not from there. Skoronski, is very interesting to me because he's a relative of a guy who played in Lombardi's Packers, who played offensive line. So that's interesting. But the kid from Ohio State's really good. Jalen Carter will be interesting because with his problems, he could drop. Yeah. And he's one of those players, if he does drop, somebody could, either inherit a problem or they could, if this kid will turn around. Yeah. I've seen people that have gone much later in the draft than you thought they were going to, and man, they turned out to be Hall of Famers.
Randy Moss.
So it's always tricky with a guy like Jalen Carter. Do you let him go or do you take a chance with him because the raw ability is there. The potential is there. I'm sure teams are really, really doing their homework with him. But for him to go to his pro day and be out of shape and overweight like he was, so he's not getting good advice there either. So,
Yeah, I mean, Randy Moss is probably the best example of that, right? Everybody knew how good he was. Just guys were scared of him. So he fell down to Minnesota, and Minnesota got a Hall of Famer out of it. And now, again, Jalen Carter's issues are different than Randy Moss's issues. But because, again, I think we see, well, he got arrested, so he must be this horrible kid. He got arrested for drag racing, for driving, recklessly. That's not the same thing as drugs and gun stuff and those kinds of things. So we got to understand that. But again, he comes into the pro day overweight, heavier than he was before, and not in shape. That's a big time red flag. And I'm guessing that scares more people than anything. So I'm interested to see how that one shakes out. I got Lucas Van Ness going to the Titans at 11. And then I've got Washington trading up just a couple spots with Houston from 16 to 12 to take Will Levis at quarterback. Again, I'm not a Will Levis guy. I don't think Will Levis is going to have a great career in the NFL. I put him in that Ryan Tannehill category where he's going to be a pro, but he's not going to be this great pro. But Washington's a team that has Sam Howell and nobody else really. So I could see them making a move to get Will Levis. I could see Tennessee possibly selecting Will Levis. But again, same thing with Atlanta. Why would you take Will Levis when you just took a quarterback last year? Why not? Do you not trust your development? Do you not trust your coaches? I mean, Atlanta's got Desmond Ridder. I mean, is he not a guy that you think you can do something with? Tennessee got the kid from Liberty. Now his name Malik Willis. Do you not have any faith that he can do anything for you? So why take? I guess to me, if he's not the top quarterback, if he's not C.J. Stroud, and he's not Bryce Young, my thing is just wait. There's better quarterbacks coming next year than Will Levis. So take your chances with Ryan Tannehill and Malik Willis. Take your chances with Desmond Ridder. And if it doesn't work out, then you get a better quarterback next year. So I know for coaches that's hard because you got to win now. But the way I look at it, I think Washington could be a team that goes up and gets Will Levis there. Then the Packers, I gave them pick 13 from the Jets, assuming the Aaron Rodgers deal gets completed and that pick's included. Devon Witherspoon from Illinois, defensive back, cornerback there. And then the Patriots, I got them taking the first receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. And then the Packers again at 15, going Miles Murphy, a defensive end from Clemson. Dad, let's talk about the Packers real quick, because I'm following people who do Packer podcasts, who cover the Packers, who are adamant the Packers are going to draft a wide receiver in round 1. And I'm sitting here going, why? They have never done it. And they've had so much success with drafting second-round wide receivers. What in your right mind makes you think they're going to take a receiver this year? It does not fit what the Packers do. Could they do it? I suppose they could. But will they do it? I'd put my money on no. They will not. And traditionally, they're going to go defense. Last year, they went 2 defensive guys from Georgia. Maybe they go offensive line. But I don't see him going wide receiver, and I don't see him going tight end, which is what a lot of people want them to do at 15. So I'm going to give them 2 defensive players here in the first round. Your thoughts on that?
Well, if they have these 2 picks, I'll be shocked if one of them is not a tight end. I mean, I think that's what they need. Now, this has got a lot of tight ends in the draft, so they can get one later. But I think they've got 2 or 3 pretty elite tight ends in this draft. And if they have 2 first-round picks, I'll be very surprised if one of them, isn't. Now, they may trade down and get more picks, and that would be different there. But I'll be shocked if they don't take a tight end if they get 2. Now, defense, they need defensive line. They always need, like I said, cornerback, safeties. So I would be surprised. I've heard the wide receiver thing too, and I'm not sure I understand that. I'm not sure the right player is there unless there's somebody that just absolutely, is what they're looking for. I wouldn't think that's the case. New England with a wide receiver is a little interesting just because they just got Juju Smith-Schuster. Of course, you never know what New England's going to do, but I mean, would they maybe not go somewhere to strengthen their defense or something since they have a wide receiver they picked him up, maybe take a wide receiver later on. I'm not sure they'd go wide receiver in the first round either.
I mean, Juju's a great number 3 wide receiver, but you still got to have a number 1 or number 2. Now, I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I think Juju's a great number 2 wide receiver. He's not a number 1 guy. They've got a couple nice number 2 receivers. But again, I don't know. Again, you look at the relationship that Belichick has with Ohio State. He also has a great relationship with Alabama, but those are the kind of things that I'm looking at here as well. I got the Texans going wide receiver at 16. This would be if they traded down with Washington, getting Quentin Johnston from TCU, who a lot of people like as the number 1 receiver in this draft. The Steelers going Joey Porter Jr., Penn State cornerback, and ties, of course, to the NFL. At 18, I've got the Chargers trading up with Detroit, going Bijan Robinson, the running back, Austin Eckler asking for a trade. They need a top-tier running back, and Bijan Richardson is the guy in this draft when it comes to running backs. Yes, you can get value later, but this guy is a guaranteed stud coming in, and he can do all the things that Eckler did and maybe more, especially as a running back versus a receiving back. So I figured if anybody's going to go up for Richardson, it makes sense that the Chargers would go up and get him. Chargers, what are you thinking that they're going to do here in the first round?
That makes sense, with them getting a running back from there and maybe trading up to do it. This would be a big year for the Chargers, I think, and their coaching staff. So we will see. But all those picks, that made pretty good sense at this point. So no doubt about it.
Just some other highlights real quick and we'll move on. I got Seattle taking Michael Mayer, the tight end from Notre Dame, at 20. Broderick Jones going to the Lions at 22. He's an offensive lineman from Georgia. I've seen some people put Broderick Jones in the top 10, even possibly being the first or second offensive lineman off the board. We will see about that. Jordan Addison to Baltimore at 23, who needs wide receivers. Zay Flowers, who a lot of the guys love. Wide receiver out of Boston College, supposed to be an incredible talent. And I've got him going to Minnesota. Adam Thielen gets cut, and so that opens up some opportunity there in Minnesota for somebody like Zay Flowers. I love Keon White out of Georgia Tech. He's played tight end. He's played outside linebacker. He's played a couple of other positions too. I've got him at 26 to the Giants. Outside of that, let's see here. I got Bengals taking tight end, Dalton Kincaid at 29 out of Utah. And then I got Kansas City rounding out the top first round with Jalen Hyatt, the receiver from Tennessee. And I admit, I didn't know where to go with Kansas City. Well, really, that whole last 4 or 5 picks there, it's kind of a crapshoot. So I ended up going Jalen Hyatt there. Any of those final picks, either that I just talked about or otherwise listed, that catch your eye or have a thought on?
No, I mean, that last pick with Hyatt, I think he's going to be quite a wide receiver and got speed. I think that makes sense for Mahomes. Again, they've been successful with doing with a lot of different wide receivers. And I think if a guy like that drops to there, that would make a lot of sense. And like I said, there's a lot of good defensive players. It seems like in this draft, again, I haven't really delved into it as much as I will, in the next coming weeks. But, seems to be a fairly talented draft. And I think the first 2 rounds, you're going to get some good players for sure.
Yeah. I like to see where it all shakes out. And the last 2 years, I've been on a draft show. I show up for a few picks and discuss. I'll do that again through Belly Up Sports, and we'll be on the Belly Up YouTube page doing that live during the first round. I'll be there for picks 11 through 15 this year. Looking forward to that. Any other NFL draft things that are on that mock draft?
No, I think as we get closer to it, there'll be a lot more. This will be a draft's always a lot of fun and it's exciting. And I think this one, there could be a lot of movement again with the talent, a lot of trades up or down. Several teams. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think there are 4 teams that have 2 picks in the first round. So that always makes it interesting. And we'll see. And a lot of trading of draft picks been going on. So over the second and third rounds, and then that always provides a lot of ammunition to move around. So I think it'll be an exciting draft like it always is, and a lot of good talent. It is funny when you look at the draft and you talk about that offensive lineman from Georgia. It's getting harder and harder, I think, for teams to pass up guys from Georgia. I mean, they have been successful now. There's been a little off-field stuff this year.
Sure.
But as far as their system and their talent level, they seem to be pretty NFL ready.
Yeah, I agree. And this is, I think, the first year ever that we don't have every team or every pick being selected in the first round, because Miami had their pick forfeited due to their illegal tampering with Tom Brady a couple years ago. So that'll be an added story to it as well. But I think you're right. It'll be a lot of movement. There's been continued movement in the NFL this week. McCole Hardman signs with the New York Jets to join eventually Aaron Rodgers, which meant there was no room for Elijah Moore. He gets traded to the Browns, which brings back a second-round pick. So it's Moore and a third-round pick to Cleveland for a second-round pick this year. Maybe that second-round pick ends up going to Green Bay here in the near future. We will wait and see how it all shakes out. But more people on the move, and we'll continue to see these free agent moves kind of trickle in here as we get closer to the draft as well. Any comments? There's really no news on Aaron Rodgers. Any comments on that or anything else in the NFL?
No, we're just, we're waiting to see. I think the Packers are in a good position, and, they definitely need to get a good deal out of this for trading Rodgers, and I would think they will. So we'll see.
I agree. Today's program is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. If you want the purest jerky in the game, you got to go straight to the source. And Righteous Felon has partnered with the best natural black Angus beef producers in the land to lock up, supply, and guarantee the best tasting, the best textured, and the freshest beef jerky on the market. Visit righteousfelon.com. Use the promo code BELLYUP. You get 15% off your purchase. And I'll tell you, I sure enjoy my Righteous Felon jerky. Actually, I need to order some more because they got 2 new flavors that I want to try. So one of them is a Korean barbecue flavor, and the other one's a teriyaki flavor. So I want to order those and give those a go as well. RighteousFelon.com, promo code BELLYUP. All right, Dad, let's get to the NCAA tournament. And it was a wild first weekend in the NCAA tournament. Brackets busted everywhere. Of course, let's see here. Number 1, Purdue, eliminated by Fairleigh Dickinson. Number 2, Arizona, was defeated as well by Princeton, who is still in the tournament. Virginia gets beat by Furman. That was a big deal as well. And I feel like I'm forgetting one more big one, but maybe not. Kansas. Well, Kansas got beat by Arkansas. That probably wasn't as big of an upset as the 15 and the 16. But anyway, Marquette. Marquette got beat this week as well. So 2 number 1s, 3 number 1s are – no, 2 number 1s are already out. A couple number 2s are out as well. And so, Dad, we get into this weekend, the Sweet 16, Alabama, San Diego State, Creighton, Princeton in one bracket. FAU still hanging around, Tennessee, Kansas State, and Michigan State in another bracket. Gonzaga, UCLA, Arkansas, Connecticut, and the bracket. And then the last one's Houston, Miami, Xavier, and Texas. Which of these underdogs? So that would be Princeton, who's facing off against Creighton. I'll throw in FAU. They're a 9 seed, but against Tennessee. And then I guess those are the main big time underdogs. Do you think Princeton's going to keep moving on? I mean, Creighton, they're not great. So what's the chances Princeton wins?
No, I mean, I would think Creighton will probably win that, but Princeton, I think these upsets have been great for the tournament. I think, for years there was always a lot of talk that maybe there'll be a 15 or a 16, that wins. But I think it did hurt everybody's brackets. But I think it made to help make the NCAA tournament what it is. And I think, several teams that are not usually there, FAU, maybe even Creighton, different ones. I think it's good for the tournament, and it's created some excitement. And I don't know that Princeton will win and keep going on. They might. It may be your Cinderella story. I hope Tennessee wins, but FAU's had a good year too. So, well, we'll see from there.
Yeah, first of all, it's fun having these upsets. It's going to make the rest of the tournament not as fun, in my opinion. Having these upsets, I think that you'll become less evenly matched as we go along, which could make for less fun. But you still have good teams in. Alabama's the overall number 1, Houston the overall number 2, both in. Xavier made a huge turnaround. They brought back Sean Miller, and he has turned the program right back to where it needs to be. They sit in the Sweet 16 against Texas. I think they beat Texas. And actually, I'm doing really well in that bracket, the Midwest bracket. I still have Houston, Xavier, and Texas in. I had those, and I had Indiana over Miami, but that didn't happen. But to me, it seems like we're on a crash course for Houston and Alabama at this point. But I don't know. I guess the way I look at it is, I think having the best teams is more fun than having the Cinderellas. And I think we're going to get to a point here where we go, okay, this isn't as fun as we thought it was, because it was a lot of fun last week. It may not be near as much fun this week because it may not be as close of games this week as well. So let's start up at the top. Alabama, San Diego State. I had Alabama losing to Arizona in the Elite Eight. Obviously, Arizona's gone. But I think Alabama handles SDSU. How about you?
Yes, I think Alabama will. Again, when you talk about brackets being busted, mine was in some ways, but 3 of my Final 4 are still in. Ones
nice.
that I predicted there. And I think I have 8 out of the 16 and 4 out of the 8, but 3 out of the Final 4 of mine are still in, and Alabama's one of those. So I hopefully they'll keep going.
Man, of the Sweet 16, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 of the 16. And my championship is absolutely out. Purdue, I picked them to win, but I had Houston in there as well. Final 4, I only have 1 left, and that's Houston. My bracket is busted, big time busted, but I don't care about that. I can handle having a busted bracket. I still want good basketball, and I'm not sure we're going to get it with some of these games. What about Michigan State, Dad? Michigan State, Tom Izzo. He's an incredible coach, and had a really interesting interview with Dan Patrick this week. If you don't listen to Dan Patrick, it'd be worth going back and listening to that interview. He kind of talks about why all the good coaches are leaving, and kind of how they're just tired with everything that's going on in college basketball. But Tom Izzo's a great coach, especially when you get to March Madness. He faces off against Kansas State, who looks pretty good as they beat up on Kentucky this past week. How do you feel about Izzo and Michigan State moving forward, or do you think Kansas State gets them?
Well, I think Kansas State, they've had a good year all year, so we will see. I like the Big Ten. I like Izzo, so I'd be all for Michigan State winning. I think that bracket is probably going to obviously have the lowest seeded team in the Final 4, potentially. I think there'll be good games, though. I think Tennessee and FAU, and I think Kansas State and Michigan State can all be very good football or very good basketball games there. I kind of think Kansas State might come out of that one, but it could go either. Michigan State surprised me. They've come this far for sure.
I don't like Arkansas. I don't like Musselman. I'm not a fan of that program, but I hate Kansas. And so Arkansas beating Kansas was a wonderful, wonderful thing for me. They face off against UConn. To me, this is the least exciting matchup of the weekend, Arkansas versus UConn. Which way do you look at in this matchup?
I think, I think it would be, I don't know. I think Arkansas could keep going. They're playing really well right now. I'm not necessarily a big UConn fan, so I'd probably be for Arkansas.
I'd be cheering for UConn, but I think Arkansas definitely can win that game. Gonzaga and UCLA might be the funnest game of the weekend. I believe in Gonzaga. I don't believe in UCLA. But that being said, UCLA's had a pretty good year. So a 2 versus a 3 seed, UCLA, Gonzaga. Which way do you lean in that one?
Well, UCLA is one of the teams in my Final Four, and actually, I have them winning everything. So I'm going to keep going with them from there. I picked them to win it over Purdue, which that won't happen. But I definitely have UCLA in my Final Four, and I think UCLA will keep moving on. They've had a good year.
Yeah, they've done well the last 2 years. Texas and Xavier. I like the Xavier matchup here. But Texas again has played at times really good this season. But I like Xavier. I'd like to see Xavier and Houston in the next round. How do you think the rest of that bracket plays out? Xavier, Texas, and then Houston, Miami.
Again, Xavier was a team I put in the Final Four. That was kind of my surprise team coming all the way through. So definitely they have played well, and I think they can, they may have a tough time with Texas. I think they might have a better shot with Houston, to be right honest. But Texas is a very good team. But Xavier, very athletic, very talented, and hopefully they'll make a run. And I think it'd be great to have them in the Final Four.
I'm looking real quick to see if my memory serves me right. I think Xavier's matchup with Texas is going to lean Xavier's way. Now, ESPN's predicting 70% chance Texas wins this game, which makes me more confident that Xavier wins the game. But I guess overall about the same. Xavier scores about 4 more points a game, but Texas' defense has had a better year, 7 points a game better. Defense is very similar as well. Field goal percentage slightly higher for Xavier. Rebound slightly higher for Xavier. So it could be a decent matchup. I like Sean Miller better than I like Texas. But then Houston, Dad, you have zero respect for Houston, and I don't know why that is. Kelvin Sampson has had a long career and has proven himself to be a decent coach. And then Miami is really nothing to write home about. Houston's been number 1 throughout the season, 33-3 on the season. You seem to think that they're kind of overhyped this year.
Yeah, I knew they've done well all year. I hadn't seen them much until really their conference tournament, and they lost in the finals to that, correct? And so I just didn't feel like they were heading into the tournament in the right direction. But maybe they will be, and maybe they'll be in the Final Four. That won't surprise a lot of people, but I think Xavier is going to be tough, no doubt about it. And so we'll see.
They lost in their championship game. It was their first loss since January 22nd. So they don't lose games very often. Houston doesn't. And I know you did. We talked about that already, so we won't hash back into that. But you put a lot of credit into those conference tournaments, and I think they mean less now than ever as well. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But it was an exciting first weekend. And it should be at least we should have some pretty fun games moving forward here. I'll say, and this wasn't my original pick, but I think Michigan State could find their way in the Final Four. I still like Gonzaga coming out of the West bracket, and then Alabama and Houston out of the South and Midwest brackets as well. But if this weekend taught us anything can happen, and that's why you play the games, right? You gotta go out there and play them and see what happens. Tournament success is always a good thing for a coach. Just ask Tobin Anderson and Ed Cooley. Tobin Anderson, the Fairleigh Dickinson head coach, he moves to Iona, taking over for Rick Pitino, who moves to St. John's. And the Providence coach, Ed Cooley, takes over at Georgetown. St. John's and Georgetown have some history, but the recent history has not been good. So let's talk about Rick Pitino a little bit, Dad. Obviously, he was the coach at Kentucky when I became a Kentucky fan, and he's a phenomenal coach. Now he goes to St. John's with an opportunity to get that program turned around. And if he had success at Iona, he had success in Greece after he couldn't get a job anywhere. He had success in Louisville and had success in Kentucky. I mean, he's going to have success in St. John's, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's a good basketball coach, no doubt about that. And St. John's is a place where, I think fits him well, and he should do well at that. So, I'm a little surprised he's moved back up in the ranks, but in some ways I'm not surprised. And he's definitely a good basketball coach and a good recruiter.
Yeah, and a good cheater. I came in after the heyday of Georgetown, really, but I knew about them as a kid and as I'd grown older, mainly because of Patrick Ewing. But then, of course, Iverson came along as well, and they had the historic coach and Coach Thompson. They just haven't been able to get back to that point. Ed Cooley, is he going to be able to get him to that point? I'm not sure that he is. He did well at Providence, but is he the answer in Georgetown?
Yeah, I don't know that he is. It's kind of interesting to me that all these coaches have kind of stayed in the same area here. But, they know the lay of the land, and that makes sense. Georgetown does have a lot of history. You would think it's a place that you could recruit to and, would turn things around. I don't know that he's the answer there or not. We'll see.
Anything else with the men's tournament?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, it's been a good tournament so far, and I think it'll be fun this weekend.
I don't have anything to talk about with the girls' tournament, but I'll give you the floor. Anything you want to discuss about the girls' tournament?
No, I've kept up with it just a little bit, but not a lot. There's, a big upset there with Stanford getting beat and with Ole Miss moving up there. But otherwise, Tennessee's still in it, so that's good. MTSU did get beat, and the team that beat them, won again. Colorado beat Duke, so I've kept up just a little bit with it. But I think it's been a good tournament. I think they've been pleased with it. But no, I don't have a lot of other information on that.
There's other postseason tournaments that go on. I cover Eastern Kentucky University sports. They went to the College Basketball Invitational, a 16-team tournament. They won 3 straight overtime games. Actually, last night was double overtime to make it to the championship game in the CBI. And they trailed by 20 in the first half tonight in the championship game. They came all the way back. They ended up losing by 3 points. And coming up just short, actually had a shot at the end of the game to tie it, and it did not go down. But I wanted to congratulate Eastern Kentucky University for their great postseason run in the CBI, and an absolutely fun team and a blast. I had Coach Hamilton on my local hour last week, and he loves this team, has done a great job with them as well. And so I wanted to just shout out them real quick, congratulate them on a great run in the College Basketball Invitational. All right, Dad, we inch closer to next week, Dad, will be the night before opening day in Major League Baseball. So we'll be talking baseball next week as we also climb closer to the NFL draft, NFL free agency, and to maybe even Aaron Rodgers news. We will see how it shakes down. I want to remind people, you can tune in Sunday night at 8 p.m. We'll do the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. Wednesday night will be the Sports Stove Podcast. And then Friday morning, even this Friday morning, we'll be dropping an audio only, the Sports Stove Local Hour. I actually sat down and chatted with a beach volleyball player from EKU this week, Shannon Stone, and had a conversation. I don't talk a lot of beach volleyball, but it was a real blast to chat with her about beach volleyball in Richmond, Kentucky. Not something you think a whole lot about. So nonetheless, that'll be a great program coming out Friday morning for you as well. Dad, anything else tonight?
Nope, I think that'll do it. Again, we got a lot going on and a lot coming up here in the near future. Like I said, with baseball getting ready to start, we've had one fantasy draft. We got another one this week, and a lot of people are probably, getting into fantasy baseball, and that's exciting. But like I said, basketball tournaments is huge, and the NFL never stops. And now that we're getting ready for the draft, I just keep hearing stuff all the time. So
definitely. I'm going golfing tomorrow. That'll be fun. First time this year, and first time since last summer. So that'll be a blast. Looking forward to the weekend, though. Like you said, fantasy baseball draft. I've been really in the NASCAR this year, so watching that this weekend too. Lots of stuff happening. All right, follow us on social media at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Sports Stove podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.